Stormwater runoff poses a serious risk to the waters of the United States. To give you an idea of what stormwater runoff is water that comes from either rainfall or snowmelt. This water then flows over impervious surfaces, such as roads, sidewalks, and roofs, and picks up pollutants, such as oils, trash, and sediments. This water then flows until it can be dispersed into a local water body or percolate into the ground. Stormwater has already caused many issues in the waters of the US. One local example is the Charles River. In the past, stormwater and wastewater dumping had polluted the Charles River to the point where people weren't able to swim the river. But after 1995, when the US EPA declared it a goal to clean up the river by 2005, the Charles River Watershed Association started to implement cleanup measures. Now, 89% of the Charles River is safe for swimming in dry weather. There is still much work to be done, since Boston is always expanding, and there are still too many polluted stormwater outfalls that lead to the Charles River, but this is a good start.
In 2012, the US EPA conducted a water quality assessment and found that of the 57% of lakes, rivers, and streams that they assessed, 97.5% of them were impaired, meaning that they were unfit for human recreational activities such as fishing and swimming. Now Fred Sivian will talk about how stormwater is managed in towns.
I'm Fred Sivian. I'm Massachusetts Stormwater Coordinator. My role is to help people understand what the federal, state, and local rules are. What Mass DEP does is help people figure out what federal, state, and local rules are for stormwater, how to reduce pollution from stormwater. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It's basically the system that a town has to be able to gather stormwater from its hardscape, from roads, from other surfaces, and delivers it efficiently to rivers and streams. The MS4 permit is permission from EPA for a town to discharge stormwater from its system. So what it does is regulate how a town takes care of its stormwater system, what kind of pollutants are in its stormwater system and how it deals with those, and how it maintains that system. The 2003 MS4 permit contains some general requirements the towns need to meet in order to discharge stormwater from their systems. There are 6 minimum control measures, have to do with public education, public outreach, taking care of town facilities, having construction and post-construction rules and regulations, and also preventing illicit discharges into the stormwater system. The way we've handled stormwater for decades is to efficiently gather up stormwater from rooftops, from parking lots, from roads, put it into pipes and deliver it efficiently to rivers and streams. That's a good way of dealing with stormwater. It's also a really good way to deliver the pollutants that rest on those hardscapes to the rivers and streams. The major changes in the 2014 draft MS4 permit is that EPA is specifying in great detail for 5 of the 6 minimum control measures what towns must do in order to discharge stormwater from their system. It's as if EPA decided that towns were responding in too general a fashion to the 2003 permit and decided to get very specific in 2014. The first is administrative burden. There are over 250 separate requirements in the 2014 draft permit. It's going to be very difficult for towns to be able to meet all those requirements. The second challenge towns are going to have to face is the cost. They're going to have to go back to town meeting and ask taxpayers to allocate money for these stormwater systems. It's going to be difficult for towns to ask town meetings to spend 2, 3, 4 times the amount of money they're spending now on stormwater.
During our project, we studied 3 different towns, Southbridge, Holden, and Millbury. We determined their current cost of stormwater management by interviewing town officials in charge of stormwater management. We then analyzed the 2014 draft MS4 permit and estimated costs with the assistance of Fred Sivian. Holden, which is a town of about 17,000, spends about $186,000 yearly, but under the new draft permit, they would need to spend about $258,000 yearly. That's an increase of about 39%.
Another example is the town of Millbury, which has a population of about 13,000 and spends about $584,000 a year on stormwater management. However, under the new draft permit, they would have to spend over $735,000 a year on stormwater management. This is an increase of about 26%. These costs aren't optional either. The requirements that come from the MS4 permit are mandated by the US EPA. But there are ways for towns to save money. They just need to start researching them now, before the permit is released, because once the permit is released, there's a relatively short amount of time before they must be in compliance with the MS4 permit. Now, John Woodsmell will talk about some of the issues of the draft permit from the perspective of the towns.
I'm John Woodsmall, Director of Public Works for the town of Holden. There's a lot of things in this permit that for a lot of towns are going to be very difficult to implement. Smaller towns with smaller departments without the paid engineering staff, without the paid engineers in the DPW, really will have to go to outside consultants to come up with how they're going to meet this permit. And that just isn't going to involve extra money that unfortunately a lot of these towns and small cities don't have. A lot of the public education and outreach efforts are something that really is best geared towards communities getting together with their neighbors and approaching it on a regional basis and not just trying to do it all themselves and go it alone. There's 250 plus towns and cities in the state that are going to be covered by this permit, and rather than coming up with 250 different public education outreach pamphlets and presentations and things of that matter, it makes a lot more sense and it's a lot more economical for towns in a similar region to work together to come up with a common set of information to hand out to people.